For the next 3 days, Bianca had managed to keep herself preoccupied with school and work in the mornings and early afternoons while Felix worked out. Then in the evenings, she'd be back at the cabin with him. Tony had called and texted her in the past few days, excited that she'd seen her on TV and in the tabloids. Well, photos and some footage of her getting into her car or walking onto the small satellite university campus where she attended the only class she wasn't taking online. They'd been pretty sneaky so far and surprisingly respectful of her space. Because most of the photos Tony had mentioned, Bianca hadn't even been aware when they'd been taken. Only once had she noticed a photographer across the parking lot, aiming his camera at her. She'd never understand how celebrities could stand it. It had totally crept her out. Bianca had to laugh at how giddy all this made her friend. The woman was glued to the television and her computer now that she had a friend who was actually part of her favorite pastime, reading the gossip columns. She was on the phone with her now as Bianca drove back to the cabin. Usually, Felix either picked her up himself or he sent a car if he wasn't done training. But he'd be leaving early the next morning for Los Angeles to do some promoting and wouldn't be back until the following night. Felix could have a driver drive her around in one of his fancy town cars while he was gone. But Bianca felt more comfortable in her little Civic. She still felt a little weird about knowing there was a driver waiting on her when she went shopping or stopped by to visit with Tony. "Why aren't you going with him?" Tony whined. Bianca crinkled her nose. "Because he'll be busy the whole time, and I'll be cooped up in a hotel room." "I'm sure he'd find a way to keep you entertained," Tony countered. "By myself? No thanks. Besides, I have school and work." "He's doing the late-night show. You could meet Conan O'Brien." Tony's exasperation made Bianca laugh. "I'm sure I'll get a chance to meet him some other time." Bianca had already met a few celebrities because of Felix, and she never felt quite as starstruck as she knew Tony would have been. But at the risk of having her friend pass out, she wouldn't mention her lack of interest in meeting the late-night mogul. "So are you staying at his cabin tomorrow night anyway, or are you going home?" The question was one Bianca had contemplated for days. Felix had actually suggested she and Gio go do something tomorrow, go snowboarding again or catch a movie. She knew it was only because he felt bad about leaving Gio up there on his own. The past few nights he'd hung out with them after dinner, watching television or playing pool. Felix had even asked him if he wanted to join them in the hot tub last night, which Gio immediately declined. Ray and Ignacio weren't much for socializing. They were always calling it a night and heading to their rooms right after dinner. Some of the nights, like the first night Gio had gotten there, they didn't even join them for dinner, but took their food back to their rooms instead. The dreams hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd become even more intense now, one of the most intense being the night they got back from dinner at Noah's. They were so intense she was beginning to get nervous. She'd been known to talk in her sleep in the past, although her grandmother had teased her once that it was more aggravating than anything because it was impossible to make out any real phrases. She said mostly it was just a word here or there that wasn't even all that intelligible. Too often the only word she remembered crying out in her dreams was Gio. Bianca felt her face fire up as she pulled her car into the dairy parking lot. She wasn't buying anything, but she needed to talk to someone about this already, and she didn't want to have this conversation while she was supposed to be concentrating on driving in the snow. "Tony?" "Yeah?" Biting her lip, she tried to think of where best to start. "Have you ever been in a relationship where you were happy, but still found yourself attracted to someone else?" "Oh, honey, this sounds juicy. Hold on, let me turn my sign over to closed and lock this door." Bianca heard her giggle, and she smiled, trying to shake the anxiety she'd been feeling for days. She turned the key, shutting off the ignition to her car. "Okay, so who is it and how come you hadn't told me?" "First, you answer my question." Bianca drummed her fingers on her thigh. "Have you?" "Of course I have. It's perfectly normal. Even married women can be attracted to other men. Nothing wrong with that unless you act on it." Bianca thought about that last sentence for a moment without responding. "Oh, Bianca, you're too cute. You have a crush on someone else and you're worried about it? I think it's especially normal for you since Felix has gone so much." "But it's not just someone else. It's his friend."